Auburn's tight end position is the most interesting heading into spring.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me as he does every single Monday, Lindsay Crosby. You can find him everywhere. The Bar in Auburn for his Auburn baseball stuff. And more coming on that potentially even later this week, as well as Braves Today podcast and more. We'll talk about Auburn basketball. They continue to prove that they're the best team in the country, despite what several people are saying. We're going to talk about how the tight end room is impacted by the wide receivers, or the wide receivers impacting the tight end room. But to me, the tight end room for Auburn is super interesting because there's a million questions. Not only are there questions regarding the personnel, Lindsay, but also questions about how it's going to impact on-field production for pretty much every position group on the offense. You lose Rivaldo Fairweather, put over 500 snaps, and you replace him with what seems like Preston Howard, former Maryland tight end. Mm-hmm. You've got Rico Walker, another former Maryland tight end that you added last year. But the question still remains, are they able to replace Rivaldo Fairweather with what's currently on the roster? And my gut on this says no.
Yeah, Rivaldo Fairweather to me feels like he was the closest you were going to come to a professional tight end in college, right? Incredibly experienced, can play multiple positions. He can be in line. He can be a split out wide in a slot, things like that. And nobody that's currently on the roster feels like you can just plug and play as that exact same thing, right? Brandon Frazier's on year 37 of college eligibility.
I'm here for it.
Medical redshirt. Yeah. Massive human being. He should be working with Bruce, if anybody. Rico Walker didn't get a chance to do a lot last year. And you're intrigued by Preston Howard, but he's got to learn the playbook, and that's never a given. I do think that you could have the potential to see later in the season the tight end position take a step up, depending on how these true freshmen adjust to college football. Yeah. Tight end's one of those positions where you're doing so much. You're involved in the run game and the passing game and all of that. It's a big adjustment period. But, friend of the show, Ryan G., Hollis Davidson, both intriguing talents. But I feel like at least starting off, we should probably not have huge expectations for the tight end room.
Yeah, and I do like Ryan G. As a freshman who could come in and definitely get some snaps early because I think there's so many questions about the tight end room. I don't think it's a very unrealistic world, though, where Auburn adds another tight end after spring. And I think all of that hinges on Rico Walker, unless there's an injury, of course. But I think there's going to be a lot of pressure, a lot of extra eyes devoted to every rep that Rico Walker performs throughout spring because there's no gray area here. They either need to feel like Rico Walker can be a dude that can contribute to this offense, or they're going to bring in somebody else to say, hey, this is the spot that we thought Rico Walker could potentially fill. I don't know if they would process Rico Walker or Rico Walker would see the writing on the wall and leave. I don't know. But I do think they expected him to be farther along at this point than he probably is. I thought we would see more Rico than we did a year ago. And I liked what we saw from him early on. And the fact that Micah Riley leaves, and then, you've got questions about Rico Walker. I think Brandon Frazier's solid. I think, you'd rather have Brandon Frazier than not, especially with you losing Luke Deal, talking about a guy who's played a lot of college football. But I just don't see that dynamic guy who you want playing 500 plus snaps going into this season, Lindsay. And to me, I think that's a big, big question. And we'll see if they even replace all of those snaps with tight ends this season.
Yeah, a lot of what Fairweather did, and I don't have PFF up in front of me, but it feels like a lot of what he did was flexing out into the slot or out wide in a situation where you could put another receiver on the field. Like it wasn't.
Yeah. So he played 530 snaps, 272 were in line, meaning he was attached to the offensive line.
Like a center tight end.
Yep. 225 were in the slot, So just a little less. 21, he was out wide, and then 12, he was in the backfield with like an H-back role.
Yeah, I mean, that's a situation. I feel much better about replacing 200 and something snaps and not having a significant drop off based on what he did as an inline guy with your current room right now. And again, it's possible later in the season as these guys get comfortable, or earlier if somebody pops, you can kind of ramp that back up. But it absolutely feels like you have plenty of reason. We'll talk about more in the next segment, but plenty of reason to run 4 wide sets over trying to shoehorn a tight end onto the field to line up out wide or split in the slot instead of attached to the formation, right? I mean, and some of that was Deal was on the field too, and Deal was in line or in the backfield, and Fairweather split out, but still, this is an area of opportunity and an area where if you lose some, it doesn't hurt you that much, I don't think. And so it's kind of really a wild card here.
So Preston Howard at Maryland last year, 469 snaps.
Nice.
On offense, 312 in line attached to the offensive line,
right?
91 at the slot, and then he played more special teams than Rivaldo did. So 91 in the slot, 300 attached to the offensive line. So he did it, but I still think even as like a receiving aspect of the tight end, I think this is more of a guy that you would trust in check down situations, short to medium. Rivaldo is a guy who can, bust the play open. Yeah, he's a playmaker. I don't know. I like Preston Howard, and I talked about him before Auburn signed him that I liked him. I think he's a solid player, but I don't think you can replace what's happening or what you're losing with Preston Howard. And so, one, if you're the coaching staff, you want to say, okay, well, maybe we can get more out of Preston Howard. He's an athlete. He can play. The other aspect of this is, okay, well, what do we do? Do we rotate more guys in? Do guys have more defined roles, even though they had pretty defined roles a year ago? Rivaldo was your receiving tight end. Luke Deal was your blocking tight end. We assume Brandon Frazier is going to be kind of what Luke Deal was a year ago. I do think Frazier is a better receiving tight end as well than Luke Deal is. Maybe that makes up for it to some extent. But to me, I think especially if Rico doesn't step up, I think you have to give reps and attention to Hollis Davidson and Ryan G, the true freshman.
Yeah, I mean, you do need a base level of competency from the tight end position. And I feel like you're going to get that with these guys you have. Our whole question, what we're kind of getting to in this whole segment is Preston Howard, Rico Walker, is anybody going to give you a step above that base level of competency, right? And I do think you were onto something when you mentioned it's possible that they rotate more guys in. I feel like it's been 5 years now. We've been asking for Brandon Frazier to get more run in the red zone. He is legitimately a massive human being. I believe he's listed at something like
it felt like he was going to have a larger role last year, then he got hurt. And so it's like
New Mexico. How
much does that impact what his potential plans were going to be? And also, like, is he going to be okay? Like, is he going to be 100% at the start of the season or even going through spring?
Yeah.
We'll see.
It was a foot injury. You feel like that'd be good by now, you'd hope.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm just asking the question for sure. And then, Mike O'Reilly played 73 snaps a year ago, which is amazing. He played in 10 games and 73 offensive snaps. It's just it's like hard to do. It's hard to do. Yeah, it's so interesting to me. And just because I think they have to know, much like the defensive line room, like we need more unless somebody really surprises us, really, really surprises us. And hopefully that happens. Whether it's Rico or Ryan or Hollis, hopefully somebody steps up in that tight end room and says, hey, yes, Rivaldo's gone, but I'm here and I'm ready to take over this room. We'll see who it is. Gut reaction is Auburn add another tight end in the next portal window.
No, I feel confident somebody's going to step up and be that guy. I don't think it's Rivaldo's level, but I think somebody's going to step up and say, hey, you got to feed me the ball 4 times a game. I'm good enough to get the ball 4 times a game.
I'll take it. And it could be Preston. Preston could totally do that. I just think it'll look different than the way they got Rivaldo the football, and that's okay. So does the tight end room impact the wide receivers, or does the wide receiver room now impact the tight end room going into spring? That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all of the football action. There's playoff time. What a great weekend. What an incredible weekend of NFL playoffs. And we've got championship weekend coming up. Make sure that you're ready. But here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players. And if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times. That's what it says. That's what it says. Get ready to run your game for the remainder of this football season. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, you get $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Is the wide receiver room going to impact the tight end room, or is the tight end room going to impact the wide receiver room? I think the wide receivers are going to impact the tight end room, Lindsay, because wide receiver, for the first time in a hot minute, the strength of this roster. I mean, you've got 6 or 7 guys that you really, really believe in, and maybe even more than that, but it's just there's not a realistic path to playing time because some of these position rooms are so deep. But I think if you're this coaching staff, and this may play into how you answered my question as far as is Auburn going to potentially add another tight end in the spring window, is do you see more 4 receiver sets? Do you see less 2 tight end action and maybe more guys attached to the line and maybe less tight end action in the slot? I think with this collection of talent in the wide receiver room, especially with some of the larger bodied guys that you have in the wide receiver room, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if we saw something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, if you're starting 3 guys, Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, Eric Singleton, right, and you're like, okay, who is more dynamic as a 4th option? Rico Walker, Preston Howard, or a Horatio Fields or Perry Thompson? Mm-hmm. You know, the argument feels pretty easy that unless you need to overtly show the threat of a run, maybe you go the 4 receivers in that situation, and you can still run out of those sets. But it does feel like you have more, to your point, 6 guys that I think you want to find a way to get on the field at different times in the wide receiver room between Coleman, Fields, Simmons, Singleton, Perry Thompson, and Bryce Cain. Feels like you have 6 guys you want to get on the field versus the tight end room where you're still asking who is going to be the guy we have to get on the field.
Mm-hmm. I'm there with you. I'm 100% there with you. And some of the positional versatility is interesting too. I don't know if Eric Singleton at the slot presents, the same challenges to defend if you're an opposing defender than, a tight end in the slot, but it's certainly something you've got to worry about, especially when Malcolm Simmons is on the field, probably in the slot on the other side. And if you have a Perry Thompson on the outside, as well as Cam Coleman, or, Horatio Fields played more slot at Wake than some of these other guys did. And so, Horatio Fields, like we've asked this question before. When we talk about all of those slot receiver snaps that Rivaldo Fairweather took over the last 2 seasons, how much of that was, Hugh Freeze's offense, and how much of that was, okay, well, we're just going to put Rivaldo at tight end because he's so dynamic and he's a playmaker, especially over the last 2 seasons when there were questions at certain parts of Auburn's receiver room, more so 2 years ago when he first got here. Does that change with the personnel, or is it just designed that he's going to have 2 tight ends consistently no matter what? Because that's kind of an ideology thing, and that's how he uses his personnel. Or if that is who you are, and that's the personnel, how easy is it to just change that? To say, okay, well, this is normally, where tight end 1 goes, or the receiving role of the tight end. How easy is it to just switch that out for Horatio or Perry if you feel like he can do that type of role? To me, I hope that's kind of what they work on this spring.
Yeah. Coming from Wake Forest, I feel like this is all anecdotal, but I feel like I've seen Horatio Fields come out of the slot and legitimately make a positive impact in the run game, right? They run that slow mesh. They do a lot of, getting guys in position to make blocks. I feel like his skill set may be a little more interchangeable with what a inline tight end would be asked to do.
I agree.
I haven't pulled the PFF stats or things like that on that. I can't imagine he's amazing as a blocker, but I can't imagine he's terrible as a blocker as much as they had him in the slot and had him doing that.
I think he's decent at it. I'll pull it up in a second.
Like probably, I would guess probably somewhere in the 60s, which for a wide receiver, you'll take it. And it's, he doesn't have the prototypical size you would want from a guy who would be like tight end split out wide. He's like 205, 210 or whatever. Yeah. But a lot of that's a mentality thing. We've seen dudes, not to compare him to NFLers, I'm not doing that, but we've seen, guys who were not massive people still make great impacts in the run game from the wide receiver position. Can't think of the guy. Used to play for the Steelers, was a quarterback at Georgia. Legendary Steelers receiver. I'm blanking on it right now. It's killing me here.
Hines Ward?
Hines Ward.
Okay.
He was not a huge guy.
You're talking about like a former Auburn guy, and I'm like,
no.
Sammy Coates wasn't. Yeah. Oh yeah. Hines Ward.
Yeah. Hines Ward. Not a huge dude. He was like 6'205", but he made a great impact in the run game. Some of it was just mentality, things like that. And I feel like Fields could do that.
Yeah. So Horatio's run blocking grade, for what it's worth, was 66.4, so above average.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you look at where he lined up, and once again, like most of it was out wide, 540, 541, but 114 snaps in the slot. And so to me, as much as I'm excited about Horatio Fields, as much as I'm excited about the upside of Perry Thompson, as much as I love the positional versatility that we think Malcolm Simmons represents, I don't want to take any reps, snaps, or targets away from Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. So while a lot of these guys can play multiple spots, and I think there's probably some questions about, where exactly Eric Singleton fits in this offense, at least from the outside looking in. I'm sure they've got a plan when they were recruiting him and getting everything ready for that. It's obvious where Cam Coleman is. That is your boundary guy. That is your main go-to wide receiver one.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's like you need to figure out where you want Singleton and then let everything else fall into place. And so if you want him and Malcolm on the field often, to me, that says you want him at outside receiver. So you want Eric and Cam and then Malcolm in the slot. And then I think you backfill after that. And so do you want Perry to get reps at a 2? And so is he behind Eric in this role? Is he behind Cam in this role? And then Horatio is probably going to be a backup, at the other one. And then, is Bryce going to be the true backup to Malcolm? Or when Malcolm's off the field, do you move Eric inside and then slot in Perry or Horatio? It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. And the exciting thing is I don't mind any of those options. I don't mind any of them.
I feel like the way spring should work is kind of to your point, figure out where to put Singleton and then try different looks with those guys, right? Your fourth receiver and your first and second tight end should all kind of be interchangeable at that fourth receiver spot, right? Sometimes it's going to be in the slot. It's going to be a tight end. It's going to be a fourth receiver. Rotate through and see who does well there. Because the good news is when the season gets here, you've got really 3 games to figure out who deserves the play time, but just check the looks and see what works now, right? You have to go when season starts, you got to face the fighting Walker Whites in Texas. You got Ball State, South Alabama.
I don't have the best feeling about that Baylor game at the moment. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. You are way more confident about that based off of what you just said than I am.
Listen, my in-laws both went to Baylor. We've got to win this game. We don't have a shot here. Yeah. I'm manifesting this, but no, this is what spring needs to be, is a lot of rotation through that fourth spot to figure out, do you put a receiver or do you put a tight end there? Because what I'm worried about is they're going to be very rigid on 3 receivers on the first team, 3 receivers on the second team to get those 6 names we mentioned all some equal run. And I really do think it's more important to figure out, does that 4th target need to be a tight end or a receiver? I think that's more important than getting the 2 teams of 3 equal run.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that for sure. And then, I don't know, just looking at these, really the top 5. I know we said 6 because we believe in Bryce Kane. And I hope he gets a larger role this year. But those 5 guys: Fields, Singleton, Coleman, Thompson, Simmons. I mean, I feel like most Auburn offenses over the last decade, not all, but most, any of these 5 would have been wide receiver 1.
Yeah. I mean, this is the best collection of talent that we have had at the wide receiver position all at the same time. I feel like since I moved to Auburn and enrolled in grad school over a decade ago.
I mean, I can't think of a better one that even comes close outside of last year. And I mean, I would rather
KLS carried a lot of that.
Yeah, but still, like, I'd rather have this one. I'm really high on Eric Singleton. So
what you're saying is Auburn's going to have 2,000-yard receivers this year. That's what a prediction from Zac Blackerby on Locked On Auburn.
Ooh. I don't think it'd be crazy for Auburn to have 2 like
600 yards,
700 wide receivers. I don't think that'd be crazy. I got to think about that. That's not an official take. I'm just thinking about it. Just thinking about it. Oh man, what a great spot to be in though, heading into spring. It's also a great spot for this Auburn basketball team, the lone undefeated team in the SEC, and what this week off means for the Auburn Tigers. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Lindsay, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than with our friends at FanDuel?
Absolutely could not. I would never do it right now. Matter of fact, as we recording this, I'm sweating out a Ravens-Bills thing right now as we're
What'd you have?
Baltimore and the points.
And the points?
Yeah.
Huh.
Extra. Right. You got extra vig on that. So
I gotcha.
Let's see what happens.
Gotcha. All right. We'll see what happens. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets, all at FanDuel.com. FanDuel's the official sports betting partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. The Auburn Tigers, the #1 team in all of college basketball, and pretty much every metric and every poll and every ranking that you want to look at. They're the only undefeated team in the SEC. They made SEC history by the most quad 1 wins in a season for an SEC team, breaking Alabama's record from a few years ago. Lindsay, even without Janai Broome, this team continues to get it done. And I know there's a lot of Auburn fans that are upset with how close the Georgia game ended up being, to where I say this team boat raced Kentucky when they were there not too long ago. You're without Janai Broome. You beat a ranked team in a true road game. Just get the win. Just get the win and move on. And that's exactly what they did.
I think the big thing to take away from that Georgia victory is it's not the same offense without Janai Broome. Like we can acknowledge it's not the exact same offense, but you were able to get clutch performances when you need them. Tahad Pettiford had like 3 shots from the field in the second half, he only hit 3, but all of them were very important shots, right? And Chad Baker-Mazara missed everything, and then finally started hitting late and
hit that huge 3 late.
Yes,
huge.
And it's just great that Bruce has the confidence in these guys to, you can miss 8-9 straight shots, take the 10th shot, and he made it. But the fact that you got these people to step up, I mean, Pettiford's doing this off the bench. The fact that these guys stepped up and were able to make sure Auburn came out of there with the win was big, because these are the kind of games you're going to play in the tournament. You're going to be face off against another good team. Maybe or maybe not. They have the crowd on their side. Who knows? You're going to have to get some stops. You're going to have to kill some momentum One of those Pettiford threes just absolutely just took all the momentum out of the room on a Georgia run that had cut it down to like what, 2 points or something.
Yeah, Chad had one too that was like that for sure.
Yeah, and it's just like these are the wins where you see this and you're like, okay, here's the proof of concept that if things aren't going our way in March, we can still find a way to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, especially with like how many losses happened over the weekend, and we went over it during the live show. Be sure to check that out if you want. It should be the show right before this, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on audio. But like UConn lost on Saturday, Kentucky lost on Saturday, Ole Miss lost on Saturday. Like this is the nature of college basketball. And how many times has Auburn been on the other side of this where we're like, dang it, they shouldn't have lost. Well, I mean, Georgia probably feels like they shouldn't have lost, but who cares? Who cares? Like, just win and move on. That's the whole mantra of March Madness is survive in advance. And when you're undefeated in the SEC and when the SEC is the strongest it's ever been in its rich history, and you've got a chance to win the regular season championship with the best the SEC's ever been, just get the wins. Pile them up. You've got 3 SEC road wins already. It's more than anybody else in the conference. Like, just take it. Just take it and move on. You get a week off until you play Tennessee on Saturday night. Neville is going to be insane, especially if you get Janai Broome back, which there seems to be a lot of positive optimism that he's got a shot at returning.
Can I point out one thing that's a little bit worrisome to me about how that Georgia game went?
Sure.
Chaney Johnson played every single minute of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Miles Kelly, I think he came out maybe twice that entire second half. And I don't know. And some of this, when Janai Broome's back, your rotations are completely different again. But
Dylan
I'm a little
missed
bit
a lot of time.
Dylan had that cramp, missed a lot of
sure.
time. And I worry about if you keep having to run some of these guys for, an entire second half without a break, what it's going to do. But again, I think that was mostly, was it cramps for Cardwell while he was out for a good part of that? Broome should be back soon. It shouldn't be a huge deal, but that was something as that was unfolded. I'm like, he's been in here a lot, hasn't he? Like, the dude needs a breather. Give him a oxygen
Chaney
mask.
Did not play well. Like, it was by far his worst performance of the year. I would say I can't imagine there'd be a whole lot of pushback. Again, I mean, did he finish with 2? You have that in front of you? I think he finished with 2. He was like 1 of 9 or something. Like, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Maybe I'm selling him short. Maybe he scored 4 points, but it was not a good night for Chaney. But they won. They found a way. And I think Auburn's good. He had 2 points.
2 points, 6 rebounds and an assist. He was tied for second in rebounds. That was a big part of it. But offensively, he wasn't really there. How
many shots did he take?
Crap, I don't have that.
Okay. All good. Not important. But yeah, not a good offensive night for Chaney for sure. I am glad that you brought up the rebounds though. But we'll see what they do against Tennessee this weekend. But Tennessee, from an offensive standpoint, like, I think especially if Janai Broome is back, I love that matchup. I love the matchup of Auburn's defense against Tennessee's offense. And I think with or without Janai Broome, that'll be the most important aspect of this matchup this upcoming Saturday.
He was 1 for 9, and 6 of his 6 rebounds, 4 were defensive boards, which I think is a big deal. So,
Yep, for sure. So, Lindsay Crosby, how can people find everything that you've got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball, the Braves Today podcast on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Also a newsletter, bravestoday.com. And like we've been teasing now, we got some Auburn baseball stuff coming out pretty soon too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Season's almost here. It's almost here. Hey, please like the video. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.